So when the announcement came through, when we announced that the inclusion of women's national teams, most of the people, the reaction was finally. So my first question is, what took you guys so long?
What took us so long? I think we've always leaned to including women in the game, whether in 2011 we added them in Via Pro as playable characters and people can create their own character to play with them or to play as themselves. And then we also added at a couple of different points, we had some women legend players. I think what we wanted to do is find a way for us to have like full team rosters in the game. And as we started to discuss with the IHF and maybe getting their inclusion in the game, one of the things both parties, the IHF and ourselves, was we'd love to have the women be a part of the product. Mm-hmm. And thus where we came with an opportunity for us to do the authentic implementation and really showcase the international game of hockey as we move forward. So I think their inclusion, yes, like you said, it's about time. I believe that it's about time. The team here really, our team on the game is really excited to have them in and work very hard to include them in an authentic and proper way in the product. So we're very excited for what people are going to see when they get the patch update and play with them.
Okay, that's great. So I was wondering, do the women players have X Factors abilities? How many of them? And what modes we can play with these teams and players?
So there are women that have X Factors and superstar abilities. I believe the number is somewhere around 30 of the women have abilities. And then there are, what was the second part of the question, please?
In what modes we can play with these players and teams?
Yes, and then you can play with them in Play Now. You can play with them online versus. You can play in Threes Now, so it's the Threes version of our game. And then you can also play in the tournament modes that we've created specifically for, all three tournaments, the juniors, the men's, and the women's. So people can take whichever national team they want for the women and run through the women's tournament and play through it like it was played last August, same rule set and everything. So it's very, it's a pretty even distribution of exactly how you could play with any of the other international teams in our game. So I'm hoping people love that they can play in many different ways and also be able to have that couch experience, just sitting next to their family member or a friend and just play and enjoy playing with the women's teams.
Cool. So what were, would you say, the biggest challenges in having the women's national teams?
Hair. I think hair is the one that's the most difficult because of the length of the hair.
Yeah.
So when we did our traditional likenesses for some of the women, the hair is very long. So we did our best with the technology at hand and how it could work. Our team's already looking at ways, how do we make that better as we continue to move forward. So yeah, hair is the number one problem that we work towards and solve. And then the other parts of it, women, to me, when I've always thought of it as my daughter plays hockey. When I go watch a hockey game of hers, I don't really think of it as girls hockey or women's hockey. They're just playing hockey.
Yeah.
Because they wear the same equipment, they're doing the same moves. Some of them are better than some of the boys, some of them are a little bit weaker than some of the boys, but that's just any kid playing hockey. So I don't think of it in any way, shape, or form different. And when I watch them play, the women's national teams, same thing. They are playing at the highest level. They are the best players for their nation participating. There's no difference. So I think in a gameplay side, they're going to play hockey at an authentic level. And then the most difficult is more just the uniqueness of the hair. I mean, they're wearing helmets, they're wearing gloves, they're wearing the same kind of things that the men wear. So it's funny. I don't think of it when I look at side by side the game, a men's game and a women's game in our game. It sometimes can be hard to tell. But then my daughter gave me a really good example. We were at a McDonald's a couple of years ago, and on TV, she goes, "Oh, Daddy, there's hockey." Okay. And I look up and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, those are women." And my daughter, who just had started like being a little interested, she was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, see, the goalie has a ponytail and she's wearing a bandana." And then another woman was on the bench. She took off her helmet. She's like, "They look like boys." And I'm like, "Well, no. They're the best players." And it was a CWHL at the time. And I said, "Those are the best players, some of the best players in the world playing." She's like, "I know, but if she didn't take off her helmet, I'd have no idea." Mm-hmm. So to me, that shows they're hockey players. That's what they are, and they're very, very good at it. So I wouldn't like to participate in a game with any of those women if we're playing for serious stakes, because it wouldn't be fun.
Kind of leads to my next question. So what was the approach in terms of evaluating the ratings for the players in comparison to NHL players?
So we worked with the IHF, and they helped us by putting us in touch with two experts in regards to women's hockey. They've been covering the Women's World Championships for the last 15 or 20 years. So we worked with them in getting the ratings, and the ratings are done on a scale for women. So they're in their own scale, and the best player will be the best player on that side, and it'll have a rating level that'll be comparable to what you would say like Connor McDavid, Marie-Philippe Poulin, in that range. So they provided us the ratings for all 10 teams. We worked with them closely in helping them understand what the game does with the ratings and how it works, so that we don't end up maybe skewing something wrong. And we just went back and forth and worked with them for probably about a month and a half, 2 months, and got that all straightened out. And they helped provide us, X factors and superstar abilities for the players. It's more difficult for us as producers, designers, when we're following women's hockey, to see their X factors and superstar abilities, mainly because the men play a long season and you really start to notice what their like skill is. But with women, they play these smaller tournaments of 2 weeks. So sometimes the skills don't show up on a long-term basis. They really provided a lot of insight into that, saying, here are the women and what they do really, really well. And it helped us see the women in almost a new light in some of them. And I think that's what we're excited for people to see, like the players and their ratings, as well as what their abilities are. And they get the sense that these players have really high skill levels in the women's game.
Yeah, cool. So you mentioned earlier the different modes in which we can play these players. Are there plans to eventually have them in hot modes?
At this point, I'm not sure. There's discussions in general of what we're going to do in the future with the women, and with all leagues. We don't necessarily only talk about the women, but I think that's just a discussion on how we include them, if we do include them in that mode, and go from there. But that's still in discussions.
Okay. So if we were to simulate the Women's World Championship in NHL 22, what's your prediction on who would win?
What's my prediction? I would say maybe 98 out of 100 times it would probably be US and Canada that would win, one of the two teams. But there are some nations that are improving and getting better. So as we've seen even a couple of years ago when Finland upset Canada, like upsets are going to start to happen as each generation of women players in the different countries start to go and improve. I think that's where people can see also the ratings will allow people to see other star players from other nations and where they fit on these teams. When we got the ratings, one of the things I noticed was the Finnish team has 4 or 5 women that easily could play on Canada, like ratings wise, easily. And they pointed out, yeah, it's not that Finland doesn't have really good players, it's they only have less of them. So Canada just rolls 4 lines and Finland has to to do a lot more to keep up with all four lines. And I think that's just the growth of the sport, right? You know,
Yeah.
Canada, women have been playing a lot longer in Canada than in other nations. So I think that's where our game can really showcase that part of women's hockey.
So we'll probably do a simulation of, of the championship on for our audience, and we'll share the results.
Sure. Yes. Thank you.
So can we expect the women's team to come back in NHL 22 at launch or as an add-on later?
As of right now, with our partnership with the IHF, they would still be a part of the product moving forward. Okay. This is their first time inclusion, but we will continue just like other leagues that we've done in the game.
Can we expect a special cover with a women player?
I am not part of marketing brand, but I don't see why not in the future that would be considered.
So that's all the questions I had. So if there's anything you would like to add.
I think we're just excited to have them as part of the product. I think we will help let a lot of younger female members that are female users that want to play with the women teams have that opportunity. And also just allow them to be a part of hockey conversation all year round. I think that's a big thing for the sport in general. Letting women's hockey be showcased all year round through our game and not waiting for certain moments in the hockey calendar. That's just exposure that really brings out the best players in the world all the time. And I think that's a very exciting thing for hockey in general.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.